So we're a team, a group of 4 people specialized in these kind of things. How to rob a bank. So, how do you do that? Well, let's make some rules of engagement today. We will do this together. Maybe some ideas from you, some ideas from me. We'll do this together. No guns allowed. So we'll make scenarios, we'll make ideas. Let's keep the physical world out there. Let's do it. Cyber. This is the hip buzzword. Let's use that. Let's do full digital attacks on banks. And in my work, I give back the money afterwards. I do this for banks, for big multinationals, as a training. We train them for 2 things. 1, senior management. What is the impact? What would really be happening? How would it be? Do they really believe that digital bank robbery is... Well, bank robbery for banks it may be different, but for like multinationals in this industry, they believe no one will steal our intellectual property. Well, guys, it's already happening. The Chinese are running there. Other countries are stealing that. So just to make that impact. And on the other hand, there are companies that build security monitoring, that have extensive investments in SOC, security operations. But how do you know if it works? And does that really work in case there's a real incident? In case you don't know when the attacker comes back, and he always comes back at 12 o'clock at night or 3 o'clock at night when the best analysts are asleep. And maybe even the attacker is looking into the agenda of the analyst about what they're thinking. So we're trying to get the analysts and the SOC team to get their training as part of a big exercise. They are not aware that this is an exercise. They really believe that they're hunting down an incident. They really believe they're being robbed. That's kind of my daily job. Yes, that is fun. So, how do you do that? So, robbing a bank, where shall we start? Anybody IDs, previous experience?
Social engineering.
Social engineering?
Yeah.
Yes?
Because you said no, only cyber, but...
Yes, social engineering. We can do this cyber social engineering. We can do it digital, yes. I typically don't walk into an office because there's a camera. They're recording me. I don't want to be there. There's an idea.
I've recently acquired a quite interesting Flash application.
Yes.
That I may send in an email or something.
Yes, sending an email. Maybe combine that with the social engineering.
Take the cash machine. Take the cash machine, like the cash vending machine.
Yeah, directly to the cash machine, directly for the money. That's
not directly like punching it, but like the upper, like the bank or the money part and the computer part.
Yeah, and then in between there are 2 cables. You put in a USB cable and then a keyboard, and then you talk in this binary, and then the ledger code is open. Yes, it's a trick, but you won't get big money out of it. Yes, it's good money. But it's not a big vault. It's only 1 teller. Let's do the real big things.
Do some recon. Just checking out on LinkedIn
yes.
who their people are, how the systems work.
Good ideas. So let's combine these 3 ideas. So what we'll do is we'll follow what we call the APT kill chain. This is a model coined by Lockheed Martin after the Aurora attacks somewhere in 29 or 28. When was it? 2008 it was. Lockheed Martin and Google, Microsoft all got compromised by a group of actors, and they said, well, how did they in the end work? And they made a model out of it and said, well, they started with recon, selecting the targets, weaponization, developing these attack methods, so use the knowledge, build the cyber weapon, deliver it. That's where phishing and the email comes into play. Gain access, install your malware, establish command and control. So yes, you have malware running, but you're on the other end of the world. So how do you make sure that you're connected, but also make sure that you're anonymous? That's of course important. If you're doing this as a real heist, you do want to do this anonymous, and as we're trying to do a real heist, we want it to be anonymous as well. So we set up this command and control, so we make sure that we can communicate with our own malware, our own viruses. And in the end, once we did all preparation, then we start thinking about, hey, wait a minute, we had some crown jewels, where is exactly trading happening, where is exactly the big vaults? Let's then move into these targets. So not too fast to the tellers, let's first get into the network. So, recon. So let's just do some recon, right? Let's start. So I've prepped a couple of things. So this is hunter.io. They're a recon tool. What they do is they collect email addresses of companies, and they get email addresses, phone numbers, roles, descriptions, etc. So let's just take a Dutch multinational bank. I hope. So let's take all email addresses ending on ing.com. Probably find quite a bit. So these are the people there. They have verified check marks that these email addresses are working right now. They have, this is an investor, this is a press officer, having a phone number there. Well, this is quite nice and useful information for me for reconnaissance. I can start building an idea about who works there, what role he has. But similar, we can do this via LinkedIn. So this is someone, I won't disclose the name hopefully. He works via an interim company for the dealer desk at Radboud. And they use SCCM software. Oh, they use a Windows installation, nice. They administrate the desks via Leo's Team Broker, nice. All systems have 6 screens per desk. They use blades. 0 SLA, they just are sitting next to the trading room officers. Oh, that's nice reconnaissance, nice information. Maybe this is someone we want to talk to and send emails about. We now have a storyline. We have information. We can tell him, look, there's a new update for this software because we know he's using the software. Other things we can do. Unfortunately, I can't demo it live because my Bitcoin transfer didn't pass through in time. But this is leakbase.pw. They collect password dumps which are out there. So once Adobe got compromised, once the Yahoo leak was out there, there are all kind of leak databases in the world. They collect them for you, and you can just, I think, pay a couple of Bitcoin cents, and then you get access. And in this case, I searched for, I'm not sure which bank I searched for, but you already had 5,000 hits. But I have to have the paid version to show the original email addresses and the original cracked passwords. And yes, these passwords may not be valid for that person, but I do have an email address, I do have a storyline, I know which social media service they're using, I know information, so this is starting my reconnaissance. But this is all a bit underground. We can also just check the vacancy side. They're looking for a graduate student. Well, I believe there are quite some students in here. Email addresses on the bottom of the mail of the recruiter and a photo. So I have a lot of information for reconnaissance already in this on the more corporate website as well. And in this process, so from recon to building our storyline, let's meet Mark. Mark is a student in business. Mark doesn't really exist. We made up Mark 2 years ago. He has a LinkedIn profile. He chats things. I believe he has for his Facebook. He is quite believable. This is his website. And we use him, and we have a couple of more of these fake identities to send these emails out and to have stories to our victims. So he has a website. He's an ambitious student, soon to be graduating, and he's now doing his he's looking for an intern job, a hard worker, no 9-to-5 mentality, everything you want to hear as a recruiter. So we want to build a weapon, but we're attacking banks. They have good tools. They have antivirus. They have sandboxing technology, which will monitor if we start sending emails out. So, these sandboxes, what they do, any email which comes in, and it's an executable file, it will start executing it and analyze how it executes. And see if it starts communicating back and forth, because then it's a virus. Or see if it's just a Word file or just a passive file, and it will leave it at rest. Quite advanced technology. Way around, very simple. we just sent an email saying, "Hi recruiter, I'm hereby recruiting for a HR internship. I encrypted this file with the password because, well, this is personal information, so I encrypted it with the password, which is my name, Van Buren, because I'm Mark Van Buren. So, here it is." And suddenly, 10,000 or 100,000 euros of investments in sandboxing technology went down the drain with adding a password on a file. And this is what the recruiter in the end gets. So this is just an example of what we then do. We try to make a convincing story of the user why he should enable these security warnings. And there are multiple storylines you can think of. So this is saying this was created with a wrong version of Office, and this is actually quite a cheesy one. We're sending out, look, we're building a survey. So we have a survey studio. So you see a screenshots, please enable content to run this survey. And yes, people will say, oh, it's a survey. I need to click enable. And they will run enable. And normally that would be protected mode, but because it was in a zip and you unzipped it from the zip, it's no longer in protected mode if you're lucky. So that's the other advantage of this zip file. So sometimes we misfire things we send out something and it doesn't really work because we don't know our victim that well. Then we get these emails nicely. We're sending this out to people that are service oriented. We're sending this out to someone who is in HR. They want to get someone in. We're sending out these emails to someone in PR. They want to communicate. We don't send these kind of emails to IT guys. IT guys say, well, let me do my job. But these guys want to help. They're service oriented. So yes, we've had people that we had 7 interactions with, sending one email, does that work? And we see on our end being blocked, and we see the other end saying, well, it didn't work. Here's a screenshot. Can you please send me the survey again? And so we are having these back and forth, user-friendly customer service experience, which is nice for us as an attacker. But yeah, that's how we work, and that's how a real attacker would work as well. So, what happens if you... VMs. So, what happens if the user would click this enable content button? Well, actually, for the user, nothing would happen. In this case. So, the button went away. And this is just a demo version, so in typical scenarios, we just suddenly hide Word, so the user can't click, so you can't close Word anymore. But within the Word process, there's now malicious code running, which we created inside that macro. And the malicious code connects back to us. So let's first do this one. So what we see here is what we call our command and control infrastructure. We have 3 layers. This is the victim network. This is the bank. This is a layer of anonymization, and this is us. And what we've just been doing is sending an email out via an anonymization layer into the network, being executed because the user clicked allow content, and then our malware starts communicating via HTTP or HTTPS to one of these anonymization layers. And what they are for us, they're boxes in Amazon, in DigitalOcean, or in TransIP, wherever we hire them. And for a real attacker, they hire them, or they just use hacked web service or hacked service. And what it makes sure is that if you're running an investigation on this end, you only see traces which are not the real attacker. You only see traces of anonymization layers, and in the real life world, there will be multiple layers of this in multiple legal jurisdictions. So even police investigation is in vain because it's from Russia to the US back to Ukraine, and then suddenly everything conflicts and doesn't work together anymore. So this machine asks every minute to the anonymization layer, which just takes the message and forwards it to us and asks, what do I need to do? That's everything that happens. Every minute it asks, what should I do? This is the command and control channel we just set up. It was one click of one user. So you have invested a lot of money on your fancy boxes, invested quite a bit on your antivirus, and one click, one user. But of course, we have a risk. The user can reboot, the user can log out. So if the user, so at this point in time, we're running within the word process. We are now the word process. If someone closes Word, we have a problem. We can do very technical tricks, getting high privileges on the machine, building a new service on it, and getting that to run every time the system boots up. We can also do very simple tricks where, well, they also work. So if you take a standard office worker, he starts his day by either starting Word or by starting Outlook. That's typically what's being run all day long, every day. So you can build persistency within Word, like build a macro which always starts up if Word starts up. But you can also just take the shortcut button to Outlook and replace that by a script which first starts up your virus and then starts Outlook. Well, no one will notice if as long as the icon is okay and the software starts, everybody is happy. So a lot of ways and tricks to hide your traces there. And then we're on one machine, and we want to get higher privileges. We want to get the credentials of the user, for example. And one of the typical tricks employed nowadays is what we call abusing the WDigest protocol. WDigest was a single sign-on protocol designed by Microsoft. It's being deprecated as of Windows 8. It's no longer enabled by default. So it works as follows. Server sets a nonce, and the client sets back the MD5 of the username, password, nonce, get, and the URL. From a network attack perspective, if you're a network sniffer, it's quite an okay protocol. But if you're on this client, there's suddenly something strange happening, because the only way how you can calculate this MD5 is if you somewhere in memory have this password. So instead of all other protocols work by tickets and by smart IDs not having passwords in memory, but this protocol relies on passwords in memory. So if we can access the memory, well, then we can get the password of the user. It's a nice trick. There are much easier tricks here. So just keep calm. We just ask. So I just demoed how this beacon came in, how this beacon was started up on the computer end. This is our backend. This is the monitoring we as an attacker have. This is a toolkit called Cobalt Strike. If you look here, let's see if I can zoom this in a bit. I'm not sure if I can zoom this in. So now, what I'm now doing is, so what we see here on the top is we see a list of all the machines connecting. So we see this testing virtual machine for me. It's connecting via this redirection machine. We're running in this process ID, and we can put some notes in it, and it connected every minute. The initial time I started it up, but now I said, well, let's make it interaction. So every millisecond it's now pulling. So this is causing a lot of network traffic if you're doing this in a normal corporate network. So you want to avoid this, but for a demo we can do this. But we can now send any command to this machine. So if we say shell dir C. So this is the C drive of my Windows machine. Communicated via this channel, via this anonymization layer. And I can send any command. I can also send PowerShell commands. And I got a nice one. So, I gave a PowerShell command to show a pop-up on the user's desktop. So yes, I can do a lot of technology to get the machine to give me the password, or I can just start showing annoying pop-ups, doing phishing on the desktop. Well, who won't fall for this? Everybody will type in his password. And what we'll do, even so, if I type in a password here, let's do welcome. So here we see it, the output coming back. And the nice thing is, if we do this and the user starts typing in his password, and you give the pop-up again, he believes, oh, I probably needed the other password. So if you do this 5 times, you'll start seeing his normal password behavior. You'll start learning about how he thinks. You'll get his home password as well. You're learning really about how he thinks. So that's a nice trick, and it's local phishing kind of. So again, yes, a lot of technology. Just keep it simple. So we're in a network. Just one user, secretary, HR employee, and we want to move further. We want to move closer to our crown jewel systems. And then we get into the world of Active Directory and how the Windows Active Directory works. So the Active Directory is a collection of all the machines, and there's metadata in it. So there's a description of every server and every user in the network. That's nice. I really like it if you name your systems and you put the description e-payment system. This system is hosting the vault. Oh, that's what didn't be in there. Surprise, surprise. Let's look there. So we can kind of make our ideas about where our targets are. So by using this one computer, we start probing around the network. You won't run aggressive network scans. You just ask systems. We just ask metadata of systems. We will just learn and see where the most likely one vulnerability is, or maybe not even a real vulnerability, but more a misconfiguration, where we by default know an account being always having a weak password and seeing that the password has not been reset for 10 years. We can guess that service account is probably the same as what was in the manual or what was in a leak 10 years ago. And if we get into one server, we can ask the Active Directory, look, where are then the VIPs logged in? Or where are, maybe not the VIPs, where are maybe the domain administrators logged in? Because they have the highest power in the network. And then we use them to make a kind of a path towards the administrative workstation, and from that towards the crown jewels. So we're kind of connecting the dots. So you have 10,000 servers in there, and there are probably a couple of paths between me, a normal user somewhere in HR, and the domain administrator, and maybe the person in the vault. So I'm not doing this myself. No, we're using graph theory. Let's go back to our education. Let's go back to Dijkstra. Let's do shortest path algorithms on the network. So this is a visualization of an Active Directory where this person is an admin to that machine and he's logged in on that machine. So we can just apply graph theory, and in the end we can draw a shortest path which tells us, look, you have this permission. With this permission you're allowed to log in on that machine. If you run up, the following other users are logged in on that box. If you would run a password and put there, you will get these credentials. That credential you can connect to that machine, and by that we can make a nice graph. And this is not something per se wrong in Active Directory. We can do similar things in Amazon. So these are Amazon security groups of one of these, like Facebook, huge Amazon Park companies. And they have all kind of security groups, and you can make similar theories about how permissions work and make graphs out of it, and suddenly as an attacker you're getting completely different viewpoints than how they were originally designed. Because there is some path from acceptance to production, just no one knows it. And this is of course exactly the path that we're looking for. And these tools are still a bit immature, but this is where we see the world of hacking big corporates really move into bringing graphs and visual theory into play to make this an understandable world. So, by doing this graph theory and doing a couple of iterations over this, and maybe doing some phishing on the workstation and hacking one or two computers, it really is not per se much more technology than that. And yes, banks are preparing themselves and are getting better in this game, so over time we will all grow. But this is a matter of graph theory until in the end you'll get into the system where you were interested in, or probably first into a domain administrator. So then on the defense side, it's not always fun to be a defender. I've been that for a couple of years. You're always a couple of steps behind. You get informed once an incident is running for 3 months or for a month. You don't know when it started. But there are some tricks where we are growing. So one of them is SIEM. Just collect a lot of logs and make smart correlation rules. As I just told, my command and control is now running every millisecond, sending communication back and forth. So one computer is sending a lot of traffic to one IP address or maybe one domain name just registered. So maybe you should want to have an alert on that and have that investigated. And maybe correlate that with the fact that on that computer the user got an email from someone who we never emailed before, who was not in the internal network. So you need a lot of logs, a lot of privacy invasion to make these kind of ideal rules, because that's kind of what you want. So sending an email out of the blue, getting command and control out of it, well, that's something I, as an analyst, would like to know. So seems, well, think about processing about 1 terabyte of data a day, and then you're in a team of 10 guys, so you want 10 alerts, maybe 20. You can't handle much more than that. So this is filtering smart. And then there are people asking, yeah, but we got this report from this threat intelligence vendor about this incident half a year ago where we infected. So that means 1 terabyte a day, searching it back for a year. Yes, it takes some brain power. It doesn't take that much computation. It takes a lot of computation power, but doing it smarter can really save your day there. Especially if you're running in an incident, you want to make sure that you're on the same learning pace as the attacker. So the attacker is making his graph in your network. As an attacker, you want to make the same graph about what he's intending to do and what he's doing. So the other bullet here, endpoint detection, response. So what do we do if such a SIEM? Yes, the SIEM is a nice tool. It gives me alerts. But what happens if we have an alert? We don't know where the attacker was in his stage. Maybe he already got the money. Maybe he's just in the initial reconnaissance phase. Maybe he got 10 workstations and I'm now unplugging one. So I want to learn as an analyst as well. And for that I need tools. And yes, I can learn a lot from the SIEM, but they're typically network oriented. So they collect everything passing through our corporate proxy. They collect everything from the net flow on the network, or they collect everything from the antivirus engines. But I want to go very deep into one system. What happened in this system at that point in time? And that's where these endpoint detection and response tools come into play. You see whether I can find the right VM. So what this is a demo of a tool called Redline. It's a free product, not open source, from Mandiant, FireEye, which is a kind of an NSA daughter, but unofficial. And this tool, it can collect, let me see if I can get it. Magnification tool, magnifier. This doesn't really work, I guess. I'll just talk you through it. So what it does, it just collects a lot of data on the system, and a lot of historical data, a lot of forensic data. So here is a tab file system. It collects when there's a file created, when there's a file edited last time, etc. The same for the registry, Windows services, typical persistency locations. So what are the startup directories used on the system? Which services typically run? What users are edited? The Windows logs, etc., etc. DNS traffic, all kind of details. As an analyst, yes, that I can dive into what exactly happened, but the only thing I have is I've seen on the network this system beaconing So it started communicating back and forth from, well, what was it? 8:20 today. And that's the only thing I know. There's a system out there. It starts communicating with a strange IP address, and it started 5 minutes ago. So, how do I start with a lot of data on a file system? How do I connect that together? Well, the only thing I can do is actually, I can make a timeline. So, in the world of the forensics, in the world of the incident investigators, we're doing a lot with the timeline. And in this timeline, again, sorry for the readability. All the events, so from the file system, from the log files, they're all put together in one chronological order. And now I can start filtering, saying, look, give me what started on this machine 6 minutes ago, because this is 5 minutes plus the 1 minute. Hopefully I'll see some evidence of this email being dropped on, and the Word file being dropped on disk. And give me everything until now. Then I can dive very deep into this and start learning about what the attacker knows. So, what is he actually doing? Was this just commodity malware, which by accident passed through our antivirus? Or is this someone very sophisticated, knowing about where to place his persistency mechanism, very tailored, connecting into our network, very, very, very much hidden? So this is just a step in your incident response cycle. So you're running these kind of investigations. And you can imagine, as an analyst, this takes time. So as an attacker, you're typing one ping command. I see a network connection, and as an analyst, I will run an investigation if I'm in bad luck. It takes me 2 hours. One ping command, so the attacker is always kind of in an information position advantage. He knows what he wants to do, and I'm running behind him, trying to find him. So this is how, in the end, we find the one MD5 of the attacker. So by building this timeline, we find, okay, it was this file being dropped, it was this email, it was that subject, and that email, that Mark van Buren entity being abused. And based on that, we can then go back to our SIEM, this huge log file, and say, well, did someone else get an email from Mark van Buren? Did someone else get similar emails? Maybe do other things and cross-correlate it together. So what we encounter typically is what we say whack-a-mole. So I've shown you some of these EDR tools and some of these SIEMs, but the first time you're seeing an incident and you see some command and control traffic going to like what you think is a botnet or a malicious thing, the only thing you'll do is block it. That's whack-a-mole. You just punch it on the head and say, well, it's being blocked. Incident closed. Yes, good for the SLA. I've got outsourced SOC, so yes, they scored 1 for finding it and another 1 for closing it down within an hour. That's nice. Well, for us, we have a couple of these fake identities. Sending out a similar email is a matter of seconds. In fact, at this point in time, we can spin up new IP addresses on this anonymization layer in 40 seconds. So you can start blocking. We'll just build new ones in 40 seconds, build a new IP, new domain infrastructure, everything around it. So blocking it is not a strategy to go. And that is one of the things why we say this is a practice, because a lot of companies haven't really thought about these later processes. We always think about security incidents about preventing them, maybe a bit about detecting them, but if you detect them, what do you do? And that is one of the bigger challenges ahead of us I believe for us as security professionals. One of the nice models here is this one by David Bianco. He says, well, we can specify and talk about the attacker and what we call threat intelligence, so the knowledge we have about an attacker. And we can do this on a lot of different layers. So there's this layer of hash values where we share MD5 values to each other and we say, oh, look, I have 1 million MD5s, how much do you have? And the other vendor comes in and says, well, I have 2 million. Yes, that's bullshit. We can share IP addresses as same ID, we share lists, domain names, And higher in the chain, we get a more thorough understanding of what the attacker is doing, about how he really works. So here we're talking about artifacts. So if I was an attacker and I was using this word attack vector, well, you can say, well, this word file he's using, it always leaves this behind on the system. If you go a step higher, you can talk about the tools I'm using. He always tries to attack Word, and then he runs Mimikatz as a password dumper. So you can even talk about the tools me as an attacker having, and then you can talk about how do I think. He always just gets into a network on a HR person, then he runs a full chain of privilege escalations in the network, and then in the end he gets to his crown jewels, and then he gets a bunch of money mules and exfiltrates the money. We can also talk on different layers of the same attacker. There's a lot of talk on the lower layers because they're measurable. We can make nice reports on them. But as an attacker, it's trivial to change. I mean, if you have a hash value of my files, so what? I change one bit and the AV doesn't work anymore. It's not really painful for me. So this is the other axis of this pyramid of pain. How hard is it as an attacker? How much impact are you making on me? So if you, as a company, are working on this IP addresses and hash values and blocking me there, yes, you'll get into the easy and annoying world of yes, I'll find a way around and I'll get into it next time. I'll just send out more of these annoying emails, different storylines, and in the end, I'll get in there. But if you start thinking about, hey, how are these guys actually thinking? What are they actually doing? And you start thinking on that level and start saying, well, maybe we should discuss whether macros should be enabled. And yes, you'll get a business unit saying, yes, but our full enterprise calculations for this for this and that are built on macros. You say, okay, let's make some signing on it and approve them, but not the other ones. And then these attack paths, as I showed, well, as a defender, we can also use them. And we can say, well, let's just detach a couple of them. Let's take this vault and payment systems and put them in like one silo, and domain administrators put them somewhere completely different, and then the normal users. And let's make this graph ourselves as a company and make sure that there are no interconnections between all these kind of silos. And then we're starting to do interesting work, because then we're really, as defenders, also getting into the mind of what technologies and what ideas are they behind the attack. So the buzzword threat intelligence, which is a buzzword where a lot of companies are saying, yes, I offer you the best one, and my product is fueled by threat intelligence. Yes, but it's typically we're talking about what antivirus has been doing for years. Simple things you can easily check, but also simple for an attacker to get around. And what we should be thinking about is, how can we change companies to really understand these attackers, and not only today, because this is this model where we get in with macros, and we move further with privilege escalation and with graph theory, and then get into it. That will change over time if the defenders get better. But we need to get an understanding about how does this apply to companies, and how can we really change our full IT landscape if necessary, maybe even preventive, before an incident preferably, then afterwards, and then really make it into the number of architectural changes being made based on knowledge of the adversary. So a simple thing would be, why are we still running macros? And there are a lot of these kind of, simple questions, but companies are doing that for 10 years, and banks are typical in that, because they really are built on macros, and they have a lot of people in-house which run a small script to calculate this in Excel. And they're used to that, and no one is challenging them until it's too late, and then someone in the SOC will say, hey, look guys, the guys came in for our macros. We should have done someone on that 10 years ago. But so this is one of the challenges that threat intelligence is a lot of talking about here, where the SOC teams and the defense, the defense, which we in the end all are, we should be thinking about how can we really change IT landscapes and cut through connections, trust lines, and really disrupt attackers. So that was a short introduction, 40 minutes, I guess I made it. maybe I even gave some insights into how to defend against this. So do you have ideas how to rob the bank yourself now?
Okay, that's thank you, Pieter.
Do you actually transfer any money from the bank account to your account or something?
It depends. So what we typically do is we set up such an engagement in 3 teams. So we are the red team. Then there's the blue team, which is typically the SOC of a bank. And then there's a white team. And the white team is doing 2 things. One, it's giving us an autograph and signing that we're allowed to. and they, together with them, we set rules of engagement. And what they also do is they prevent major shit from happening. So if you don't do anything, yes, police will be informed. So if you're doing this for a bank, the police will be informed, the national bank will be informed, a lot of escalations are going to happen. No one is getting fun out of that. So we have this white team, and in the start of the engagement, we set up rules of engagement. And this is one of the...
The rules of engagement is, are you allowed to actually transfer the money?
Exactly. Or
the bank could say, yes you are, but that means...
Yes, but typically they say no, or they say, let's sit together.
Let's
sit together. So if they really believe that the system we're in, if we would manipulate it, it would be detected further in the chain because they have multiple chains. Then we can say, okay, let's go to your office, just make a reservation booking and don't call it red teaming, but call it Project X. We'll sit together with you, maybe even with an administrator of that system who is then briefed on this very tiny part, saying, okay, we are going to do this. We don't want to screw up your database.
Something bad is going to happen if we push this button. Have a look.
Well,
that's basically what you're doing.
No, we're asking them, should we do this? And if they say, well, we should find it further out, let's test if it is really detected later on, and let's see how the organization responds then. Well, then we say, okay, but we don't know the exact command for this specific application. We also don't want to screw up major databases. I mean, if you change 1 cent on the one end, you should change it on the other end as well, otherwise the balances don't add up, etc. We're not accountants, so let's do this together with someone who at least knows that we're not breaking application, but just trying to really, change one bank number to ours, for example. Yes, but then under supervision. But these are typically the things we discuss in advance, saying, okay, where can't we go? So if they say, well, we're now having a divestment, so we're selling off this part of the company, so we don't want you to go to systems relating to that, because it is really sensitive. It's insider trading relevant because we're selling this off. Let's just don't go there. We will try to obey to that, but we won't tell the blue team. They are not aware of this, so they still need to investigate their full network, but they just won't see us in Division X because it's being offshored. Or maybe it's specifically of interest because they're buying a new company and saying, look, is this a secure company we just bought? We just acquired it or integrating it in our network. Could you get in via their network into ours? And then you get a very specific scope. So, yeah, in these talks in the beginning of the engagement, we're really discussing that. Yes, the preparation. That's more the engagement. And what we then do is we really talk also with the blue team in the end and say, look, these are all the things we did here. And then we ask them, bring your timeline, bring your investigation timesheet, and then you'll see the mismatches and say, oh, wait a minute, you missed this activity of us on that computer, you missed that part, why? And then we really have a discussion about what we did, why they didn't see it, what log settings need to be changed, etc.
A question. Lots of big banks and organizations use mainframes for their primary processes. Do you also try to infiltrate those systems?
Typically not. Typically, there's an operator. And typically the operator is a workstation. And that is a much easier way in. Myself, I have a couple of gray hairs, but not sufficient to run mainframe and to have knowledge there. So there are other ways to hack around the process that are easier. So if you have four eyes principle, so you get one person to create a transaction, the other one to approve, and it all runs on a mainframe. For us, it's much easier to find 2 people in the division one in the division of create transactions and the other one in the division approve transactions. But if there would be if it would be necessary, then we may need to get some specialists in, or we discuss that then with the clients. But especially on the mainframes, even proving access is then probably sufficient. Right? I mean, if you are on the mainframe, you don't need to do anything there. So if you're on the workstation of the mainframe administrator, well, you're sufficiently close by to prove your points.
How do you negotiate the rules of engagement with the client? Because I can understand that a client would say, well, let's keep the attack to this very tiny part that is specifically tailored to monitor everything you're doing, but that will not give a realistic view of how the whole system is actually working. So how do you negotiate the rules of engagement? Yeah,
so for that, this is typically not yet, luckily, being enforced by oversight authorities. So at this point in time, most companies do this for themselves. So their incentive is to learn, which makes it a lot easier. At the point that central banks start saying, you must do this, then the incentive for a bank would indeed be, well, let's scope it to these 10 workstations which are turned off, and that one server which is... So then you really get into that discussion. So, but for now, there's not that much incentive on it. The Dutch central bank is talking about making this more or less mandatory. And what they then do is they say, well, we have knowledge of threats, we have knowledge of threat actors, so let's make the scenarios and let's see how they would apply. So they say, go to the commercial industry, maybe our Dutch intelligence services look into it, and together they will say, yes, this is a Russian actor, which is so one of the scenarios would be a Russian actor getting financial money, direct really money out. Another scenario maybe relating to insider trading. And then, well, the bank doesn't really have a choice, because then the scenario already defines a bit which systems at least should be in scope. But yeah, that's kind of the future. About whether this when this becomes really like mandatory for companies, then this will be a much more fierce discussion. For now, it's relatively simple.
So far, at least in the Dutch environment, the rules of engagement allow you to pull out a whole bag of tricks.
Yes, but for example, yesterday we asked for a client saying, look, we found these 3 systems, they're all boxes, and in the group of administrators, all the main users are in there. So anybody can log in, we want to explore these systems, run password numbers on them, etc. And then the client came back saying, yeah, wait a minute, they were already on the decommissioning list for next month, this is not really a good... So you're already seeing that there is some cover your ass sometimes involved, and well, we try to manage that indeed with starting up with clear expectations. And if it really is scoped down, we will put that down and in the end report saying, look, we believe we only saw 1% of 10% of your network because you scoped this down from the other 90%. Well, let's put it down on paper then. That's what they get for, what they pay for. Yep.
Questioning some of the details you talked about, because this Mark van Buren, for example, what links does he have on LinkedIn?
Well, recruiters. Recruiters really like students, ambitious students with business economics background. Everybody who's annoying and getting us all connected, well, we just connect them back via Mark van Buren. Which is a nice...
All of us to connect to Mark van Buren?
Oh yes, it would really make a more believable student.
So you're not interlinking your own fake accounts?
No, we're not buying fake accounts. No need for that yet. In specific scenarios, you may want, but typically then you want to have a link to your victim, where you can make your story via LinkedIn. Like via LinkedIn, I got connected you get connected via someone, but buying fake LinkedIn clicks, not really necessary. It's more that if someone Googles you, like, I got an email from a student with this strange survey, and they Google and say, oh, it's Mark van Buren. No, it's really the guy. I see the same picture as in LinkedIn. Let's click. That's kind of the check we want to get through. It's not, it's not a very deep analysis about it.
Officially, okay.
Yeah.
I have another small question. Because the macro you showed didn't do anything to Word. You said that in practice we usually hide the process so that they can't close it.
Yes, or we hide Word, or we remove the file, or it just depends a bit on the story we're in and the mood we're in. But
wouldn't it be practical to just make that button do what they think it's going to do?
We have one where it really shows a survey, but then we need to think of stories, and so if we remove if we delete the screen, and especially in case it malfunctions. So one of the challenges we sometimes have is maybe they're running application whitelisting technology, maybe they're running Windows 10, Windows 7, various versions of Office. Sometimes we're being blocked on the network, we don't know exactly. So maybe the first shot is not right. So if we can convince the user that the first shot was blamed on him to be wrong, so he says, look, my computer did something strange, can you send the file again? That really gives us a second shot. If he gets a real survey, he's completed and send it back.
Right.
But we've had scenarios where in the end, we could give the feedback on the lunch survey to the customer, besides our report, saying, look, the croquettes are very nice, but you should really improve on the soups.
So you're like covering your tracks by doing that.
Yeah.
Nice.
Final question, I guess. I see. Oh.
Do you only run banks?
No, we also run in the retail industry, big financials. I mean, what's a bank? A pension fund maybe has more money than a bank. So
you're returning the money anyway.
Yes, no, but you see that in a couple of industries, a lot of investment has been made on security monitoring, and they are really the ones interested in this. So more as an exercise. And in the industries where they didn't really have that investment, they're sometimes doing this, but then much more lightweight, not so much as a training, but much more to get an understanding at management level. Look, guys, we just got robbed. All our intellectual property just got stolen. What we have done if this would be real, just to make and start this internal budget discussion about how important is security.
Okay, so let's thank you again.